Hi, it's Dr. Laura Grace, and it has been at least maybe more than 2 years since I have created a dream video for the Dream channel that I have. And the reason for that, just real quickly, is I've been going through a process of awakening, like many of us are going through on this planet. And if you've been a seeker, wanting to really experience your true nature and the dissolving of the conditioned mind, or we call it the separate self, the ego structure, the false self. Sometimes we hear it called the mythical me, which I think is an interesting way to put it. Then you can relate to what I'm going to be talking about, because a lot of the videos from now on this channel, because of the shift that I've been going through physically, with the spontaneous kundalini or energetic awakening, and then with the significant spiritual shift, the dream videos now are going to really be leaning toward dreams that we have during, before, during, and after the awakening process. So that's what's going to be coming on this channel. So if that's what really gets you going and pumped, is to understand what happens, because as the awakening is happening, and for many people it's a gradual process, and there are some that we know about where it's a spontaneous shift and it happens very quickly and deeply and sustains itself. For many of us, I think for most of us, it's more of a gradual process. It's a letting go of the ego structure, and as we build more and more trust in the beingness or our true nature, then that shift becomes accelerated. So if that's something you're interested in, then stay tuned to this channel, because I'm going to be creating more and more videos again, about that shift regarding my own life, but also people that I'm working with, who are going through the awakening process. And as they share their dreams and they give me permission to share their dreams with you, I'll be bringing those to the channel. All right. So what I want to talk about along that, those lines, is that back in November of 2021, I began keeping an awakening journal, and I wanted to really write down and just kind of follow the process of what's happening during the awakening process within the psyche. And so I began that journal in the fall of 2021. And as I was, and awakening isn't something new to me. I've been on this path for 30 years, but quite frankly, and maybe you can relate to this, sometimes when we hear about these people who are waking up, and by the way, waking up doesn't mean that we're improving our sense of self, the body mind. It means waking up from that belief in that separate self, right? Um, and then really living from pure presence. I call it pure presence. Sometimes I refer to it as awareness, and sometimes as our beingness. It's all the same thing. You can call it consciousness, you can call it God, whatever you want to name it. But it's a waking up from the ego identification of the body mind as being what we are. When the body mind is something that was created and programmed into us from the beginning, the very beginning of our life here, in this body. So we were told that we are a body and we're a separate body. We were told what gender we are. We were told what our history is. We create a personality around all the things that we're told, and we develop preferences and beliefs, and we have perceptions, and all kinds of things are created from the get-go, and that creates a sense of separate self, right? That we believe that we are this mythical me, and then we run with that. We think that's what we are, and we create our lives and choose certain relationships and jobs and careers and experiences all around that belief in that separate self. I just want to define that, because sometimes people think awakening is improving or becoming more spiritual within the separate self, and that's not at all what happens. And it took me a long time to really get this, to shift from a conceptual to an actual lived experience, that awakening is waking up from the belief, from the dream. It's really a dream. We're dreaming that we are this separate body mind on this planet with billions of other people, and then thinking that we need to create a life around that self structure. Okay, I just want to be clear about that. So back in, just to give you a little bit of history, in 1994, when I connected and then moved in with now my husband of 30 years, the heart chakra blew wide open. And that was really the beginning of this process. I wasn't awake at that point. Um, but the awakening in its own way had begun because in the body there was a huge energetic shift, an opening. I was in A Course in Miracles at that time. I began facilitating groups on A Course in Miracles in the Midwest. And then later, when I moved to the West Coast, I began facilitating groups there and was on that path for quite a while. Now I'm on the non-dual path. My path is more Advaita Vedanta, um, but with the strong acknowledgement and respect for the body, which sometimes Advaita teachings tend to avoid the body, a strong respect for the body and somatic experiencing, somatic wisdom that the body produces. The body is a brilliant instrument, if you will, of wisdom, telling us what is going on. And a lot of people have had an awakening through the body, through their physiology, and really connecting and understanding what's going on with the nervous system, and also great respect for the mind. And sometimes on these paths, these metaphysical paths or non-dual paths, we're taught that our thoughts don't matter. We are not our thoughts, absolutely not the thoughts, but our thoughts and our body, our mind and body are so deeply connected. They really deserve our utmost understanding and respect. So anyway, in 1994, everything began. And then around 2003 or four, I got really serious again, because after 94, 96, 97, there were some detours that I took because of life circumstances. Some movement was going on. And then around 2003 and four, I got really recommitted again to awakening, wanting to understand it, what it was about, wanting to experience it. So I was really a dedicated seeker. And we'll do other videos on what the seeker of the pathless path is like. But it wasn't happening. And I was at that time following teachings and teachers like Dr. David Hawkins, who's now left his body. And so there was some discouragement there. And then around 2008, I became very serious again, very committed, and began moving into more Eastern-based teachings, different yoga paths. Um, and again, it just wasn't happening. The teacher that I began following left in her role as guru, and just a series of things happened where I just felt that for me, this lifetime, the awakening was not going to happen. And I just needed to really appreciate and embrace life as it was and just let the whole seeking process go. So that's what happened. So life went on from there. And after I closed a spiritual center that I had in San Luis Obispo, California, I went into hosting a women's symposium, and then it started a doctoral program in Santa Barbara. And that went on for years. But then, you know how this works, you know, this urge to merge keeps coming up, keeps coming up. And we know that it doesn't matter how much apparent success we've had, or relationships, or physical health, doesn't matter. Any of the things that we're supposed to think will satisfy us, we know that there's something more, right? And there's an emptiness. There's like this, for me, it was this river, sometimes a real mild river, but this river of something's missing. I don't know quite what it is, but I just knew that there was more. There was more. And it wasn't going to have from anything on the external. Nothing in the world was going to be able to bring that. And I didn't even feel like the world was my home. I felt very alien here, and have since I was a child. And many of you can relate to this, right? So in 21, after some significant changes in my life and letting go of some things that seem to be blocking more spiritual awareness coming in, a lot of letting go, more movement, a shift away from the West Coast to the Midwest and into the Southeast. Because right now, like, I'm recording this from one of my homes on Amelia Island. So lots of movement. This is, you know, as the pandemic is still going on, but winding down some. That urge to merge came back full frontal, just full throttle. And so I got really serious about what needed to happen and really looking at any resistance that was coming up that was keeping me from being really present and allowing that pure presence, pure awareness, my beingness to be so clear that I was living from that place. That was the goal, to do whatever it took to really get clear about what needed to change on the inner realms for that truth to come forward, what needed to be released from the attachment to the separate self, to all the preferences and desires and self-driven, motivated, ego-based behavior, thoughts, feelings, all of that. I was ready for all of it to come up. So when that happened, I had a dream I want to share with you. This is the apocalyptic dream. Really, the title for this video would be based on a blog that I just wrote, Awakening in the Apocalyptic Dream. And I know many of you have had apocalyptic dreams, and sometimes, very often, we tend to take them literally, which is not the way dreams are meant to be understood. They're not literal. They're symbolic, which makes them more challenging to understand, because we need to understand our own inner symbol language, our own symbolism that we're familiar with, that our psyche likes to work with. All right, these symbols. So I had this dream that I want to share with you, and I recorded this in my awakening journal. And it is definitely an apocalyptic dream, although kind of a mild version of one. But this dream is going to show you that when you're on the pathless path, because there's really nowhere to go when we wake up, we're actually releasing a belief and attachment to something. We're awakening from the self structure, not awakening to anything. What we really are, our divine beingness, is always already there. But that's the dream. That's the big cosmic joke. We don't get it. It's right here, closer than our face, what we are, but not always simple to recognize it. So the apocalyptic dream often comes up when you are beginning or going through some significant shifts in the awakening process. So basically, this dream is I'm in a vast open environment and it's pitch dark outside, and I am with the actor Robert Redford. In this dream, this is a younger version of Robert Redford, kind of circa out of Africa during around that time when he was acting. Anyway, Robert Redford and I are outside and we're walking, and there are other people around in this environment, but I don't recognize these people in the dream. And I look up at the sky and I begin to adjust my focus. And I see a whole slew of these white planes flying overhead. And they're in the night sky, but they're white planes, and I'm able to see them very, very clearly in this dream. And I realize that they might be military planes. And so I'm getting this kind of, what's going on? There's this curiosity, and I'm not in fear, but there's this strong curiosity that something is up, and I don't know what it is. And I realize that they're flying at night because they're hiding whatever mission they're on from the public. So they don't want to be recognized. They don't want to be seen. And then I see these large mountains, and I can see up on top of the mountains and even on the sides of the mountain, these bulldozers that are sitting there. But as the dream unfolds, and the dreams are always moving, nothing's ever, just like us, nothing's ever static, nothing's ever stationary. Everything's always in movement, as it is in the realm of consciousness, in the realm of the waking world as we perceive it. Everything's always moving. Even our body's always moving. The blood's always pumping. The heart is working. The lungs are breathing. There's always movement. Just notice there's always movement, but your beingness, the presence that we are, is always completely still. It's kind of watching the screen that's kind of watching this movie play out, a movement. So these bulldozers are on these mountains, and then they begin to bulldoze up the earth as I'm watching. And they dig really deep into the dirt. And as I'm watching, the entire landscape of these mountains are beginning to shift. And now I realize that this may be an Armageddon. or some kind of apocalyptic experience. And I'm concerned, but I'm mainly curious in this dream about what is happening. But in this is a big dream for me because in within the dream inside, I knew that something really, really, really big was being unearthed, uncovered. I just didn't understand it yet. So we're going to unpack this dream. If you've had an apocalyptic dream, the first thing is every dream is a gift. And even if you feel a lot of fear while you're having the apocalyptic dream, you don't need to be afraid of looking at that dream because chances are there's some significant shift that's about to take place or is taking place deep within you. And sometimes we say, oh, there must be something in the world that's going to happen. No, no, this is something within you that's shifting. Because when we're waking up, this is an incredible, significant shift that takes place. Incredible. It's like, again, that separate self or that false self is being bulldozed. It is being broken into tiny pieces. There are many times during the awakening process that we feel like we're dying. We feel like we're dying and that something really bad is happening, but we're not dying. There are many deaths that are taking place, but it's the death in the beliefs and the attachment to the sense of separate self that you've had all of your life into something much, much, much more powerful, much more, well, it's timeless and it's forever content and peaceful. So it's something big happening, all right, but not in the external realms. So Robert Redford is an actor, right? And this represents in this dream that I had the different roles that I have played throughout my life. Think about all the roles that you've played in your life, the roles of a child or a parent or a friend or an employer, an employee, or as a neighbor, as a lover, a partner, a spouse. I mean, so many different roles. A parent, we play so many different roles and we're acting out different roles all of the time. And we kind of slide into character for whatever that role might be, because the way that you operate when you're around a neighbor is going to be different than the way that you behave around perhaps your spouse or partner, or how you behave or operate, say, around an employer or a coworker or a colleague. You know, we're sliding in and out of these roles all the time. So in this dream, Redford is representing all the roles that I've been used to playing. Now, are any of those roles me? Are any of these roles that you're playing you? Uh-uh. We're playing them. We're a character playing out a role. The thing is, the false self, the separate self, the mythical me begins to think that it is that role. And it's not that role. It's not that role at all. You are never the role that you're playing. It's just a role. I remember hearing actor Jim Carrey talk about that, how his awakening began by him beginning to understand that, oh my God, this role that I'm playing, I'm really getting into, I'm really identifying with this role. But if I'm identifying with that role that I'm playing as an actor, what makes me think I'm not, and I'm paraphrasing here, that I'm not identifying, overly identify with the role that I'm playing when I'm not in character. And I really think I'm this person called Jim Carrey. So think of it from that standpoint. The roles that you're playing are just temporary roles and they're changing all of the time. They don't last. So anything that vacillates, it has no permanency to it, cannot be who we are. Because what we are was never born, it never dies, and it doesn't change. It's constant. Okay. The other thing that came up is that Redford is a very devoted, very committed environmental activist. And the nature, the planet, Gaia, whatever you want to call it, is really near and dear to my heart. Very, very close to me, and it always has been, but even more so now. So as the awakening has been unfolding, my time alone in nature is my sacred space. And I know many of you can relate to this because nature can handle, as you're going through an awakening, you're not just changing mentally. Eventually, there will be an energetic shift, and the nervous system will begin to change dramatically and will become go through a very significant rewiring process. For some of us, it's not that noticeable, but for people like myself, it's very noticeable, and it's the natural world that calms the nervous system for me, as well as some somatic experiencing techniques, but mainly it's nature. Nature can hold the energy. So as the energy in the body is getting stronger, as that God source is flowing through all the energy systems, through the entire nervous system, through the spine, through the brain, and this rewiring so we can handle more and more of the source energy, that everything changes. We may not feel like we look a lot different, although I can tell my appearances change. It keeps shifting as the rewiring is taking place. And it's not an easy process for many of us. And it certainly hasn't been for me, which is why I haven't been making videos or been doing anything on the YouTube channel for the last 2 years, because it's been intense. And sometimes it's been very difficult and at times quite painful. And so that's when nature really can keep us grounded and help us move through the process. So he's also representing to me in this dream that my love for nature is a very sacred space in which I need to spend a lot of time. So when the apocalyptic dream arises, what are we being invited to acknowledge? What is the meaning of this dream? And Dr. Carl Jung, and I'm a Jungian, my program, the PhD that I hold is in depth psychology, which is based on the teachings of Dr. Carl Jung, and it's all about the unconscious. Dr. Carl Jung said when the apocalyptic dream arises, it kind of like watch out, because there is a huge shift going on now that has to do with perhaps one of the biggest shifts that we'll ever go through. It is the biggest shift, not even perhaps, because it is the letting go. It is the dissolving of the separate self, and a remembering. See, we don't really wake up to anything. We remember the self. He uses the word self, capital SELF, which we hear often in Eastern teachings, like Advaita Vedanta, which is the path that I've been on the last few years. So it's the making room for, it's like the bulldozing of the attachments and the preferences of that separate self that's based on fear and separation. And so that the separate self is always seeking and looking outside itself, because basically it's feeling really empty, because it's not what we are, who we are. Course in Miracles says that it's an unlearning, because it says that you have been taught, but you have been taught badly. We have been taught badly. We're not what we were taught. And we were taught this by people who thought they were the separate self. There's absolutely no room for blame or judgment here. It is part of the conditioned programming, or the matrix, as it were, that we're born into. So the awakening is the waking up from all of that. So this bulldozing, this apocalyptic dream that you might have had is about an Armageddon, but in a very good way. We talk about people having breakdowns, or nervous breakdowns, and often there's been stigma around those. And I say, no, this is a good thing, because it's not a breakdown as much as a breakthrough. And that's what the apocalyptic dream is about. It's a breakthrough to the truth of what we are. It doesn't happen very quickly for most people, because there's a lot of letting go. And it's a letting go of resistance to whatever is coming up in the present moment. We tend to want to resist the moment, and we tend to think it's not good enough, or it's not going well. We always seem to want, the ego mind always wants to hang out in the past or into the future, something that hasn't even happened yet, because it's resisting whatever's coming up right now. Now I'm going to do another video on this, because I just had an experience of that around the pain body that was really important. It ties into a dream that I have, but that's for a later dream video. But just notice your resistance to what is. The Armageddon that comes up in the apocalyptic dream is actually an archetype. The apocalyptic dream is an archetype of something that is ready to die out, ready to be shattered, to make room for something new. So it might feel at times that life is being shattered, that your own sense of self is being shattered, and that the circumstances around you may be reflecting that because it is being shattered. But it's a good thing. The inquiry that you want to do, if it feels like life is falling apart or like you're going through some kind of ending or something is dying, is what is being shattered, or who is being shattered? Who is feeling that everything is crashing down around me? Who is feeling that everything is changing abruptly? Who is feeling like there's a death about to take place? And the answer to that will be it's your separate self. The personality will feel that something is being shattered, but not your true self, not your true nature, not the self that Dr. Carl Jung is referring to when the archetype of the apocalyptic dream makes its presence during dream time. And he went through this in his own life. He went through a huge, what people might call a psychotic break, or there's all kinds of terminology, but he went through the complete dissolution of the sense of separate self in order for his own capital S self to come to the fore. And again, I'm using these words interchangeably. Capital S self, again, awareness, presence, consciousness, God, it's really all the same thing. It just depends on what true nature, what you want to name it, whatever you're comfortable with. It doesn't matter what we name it. It's just a word. It really means nothing. But because language is all we have at times, often to communicate with, we have to work with some kind of terminology. So if you've had an apocalyptic dream, if it feels like Armageddon is happening in your dream life or in your waking life, please do not be afraid. This is actually a very, very good sign. I haven't met anyone who has shifted seamlessly into their awakened self. I don't even know anyone who's even wanted to pursue awakening, who's even wanted to be a seeker without some kind of breaking apart happening. Either there's been great suffering that the person's gone through, or there's been a lot of success, but an emptiness within that. And so, either way, any way you shake it up, there's been some huge disillusionment at the very least that we've had to go through. I mean, either this lifetime you're meant to awaken and you will get on that path of seeking. Eventually the seeker dissolves because we find out that that which we have been seeking has been there all along. And the seeker and what's being sought collapses to where there's no more separation between the two. It's just one embodied awareness, one embodied experience of consciousness. And all this unfolds as the awakening process deepens. And so we don't want to run away from Armageddon. We don't want to run away from the apocalyptic dream or the apocalyptic experience. We want to open. We want to soften. We want to go into non-resistance, which will keep us completely here and now. We'll keep you totally in the present. Let go and stop resisting, and you will stay in the present. And so what happens is, as we soften and we open to the apocalyptic dream and what it's representing for us, and know that it's actually an incredibly positive, amazing sign in our lives, amazing representation of what is about to come and happen and is being unearthed in our lives, like those bulldozers tearing up the earth. We're unearthing this process so it can unfold. As we open up to it, then we move into the place of a witness. And we start asking ourselves, when I'm afraid, who's experiencing the fear? When I'm feeling separate, who's experiencing this feeling of separation? When I'm feeling that things are falling apart, who's experiencing this falling apartness? And you'll always be able to trace it back to that personality part, that mythical me, that sense of separateness, that separate self, the false self that it's happening to, not to the truth of what and who you are. So I hope this helps. It sounds heavy, an apocalyptic dream, but now you know it's actually quite beautiful. It's quite beautiful that the inner landscape, like those mountains in the dream, the inner landscape is changing and changing in a way for so many of us. We really are in the midst of a great awakening. As all these systems around us are continuing to collapse, we see the collapse of government and of religion and of the banking systems and with the climate change happening, there's a collapse of the education system. I mean, in so many ways, the systems are collapsing is a good thing. It feels like Armageddon to many, but no, no, no. It's one of the natural cycles that this planet, that our civilization needs to go through. And we just happen to be alive, not just happen, we chose to be alive during a time when this cycle is unfolding and we're seeing the ending of so many systems that no longer work. They need to collapse. We don't want to hold on to them. We need to go into non-resistance. We need to let them fall, let them dissolve. And in our inner landscape, with the power and the presence of that we are, the pure awareness that we are, our true nature, create new systems that really give life to a new earth that's being birthed right now. So I hope this has been helpful. I really appreciate you tuning in and watching this video to the end. If you like it, then give it a thumbs up. If not, if you want to give me feedback, please feel free to give or leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. And on that note, namaste.